How can you finance your music online? There's really a ton of ways that you can do that. First of all, I think it's a great idea to start looking into some of the publicly available arts funding. Here in Quebec, of course, the best place to start is probably the Conseil des Arts et Lettres du Québec, or CALQ. If you run a record label or a production company, there's also SODEC that you should look into for sure. At the federal level, of course, we can't forget Canada Council for the Arts. And even in sort of more music-specific funding, there is Factor, there's Music Action, which are available to English and French-speaking artists respectively. There's also, of course, private sources of funding available. So, for example, I'm thinking of Stingray Music offers a prize to emerging artists through their Stingray Rising Stars program. So that's definitely one you can look into as well. Of course, you should also be looking into streaming platforms for your music as well. That's something that I don't think can be ignored these days. Certainly Spotify is the biggest one, has probably the biggest listenership as well as the biggest cultural impact as far as how people discover new music, how people listen to their favorite artists. Of course, there are others. You know, there's Tidal, there's Deezer, there's Apple Music, there's a ton of them. Beyond that, there's also platforms that are geared more towards specific styles. So for example, you have Idagio or Prime Phonic if you're a classical music listener. Of course, there is Jazzed, which unsurprisingly caters to jazz listeners. The flip side to this is that a lot of these streaming services don't offer artists particularly high revenues in returns to the number of listens that they get. So I think for a lot of artists, it ends up being more about being a tool for discoverability, a tool for exposure. And of course, the more exposure you want, the more platforms you want to be on. That requires putting that effort in or paying a sort of third-party service to submit your music to all those platforms on your behalf. An alternative option, which I like a lot, is a platform like Bandcamp. Bandcamp allows you to set the price for your music, and then they will take care of things like the downloads, managing streaming. They also give you the opportunity to sell physical media through your Bandcamp profile, which is great. They even have a subscription service, so people can support your work on an annual basis too, if you would like. And also a great way of just selling merch like t-shirts or tote bags. Crowdfunding is definitely another option. So using a platform like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or GoFundMe can be a great way to get some financing for a one-off project, like if you're recording a new album, you're looking to fund a tour. But I would say the main impact for crowdfunding platforms is for artists that already have an established audience. You know, if you're more of an up-and-coming artist, it might be a little bit more difficult to make a lot of money through that. On the other hand, a platform like Patreon, which also sort of does crowdfunding on sort of a monthly subscription basis, I think is really good, particularly for emerging artists. It allows you to sort of organically grow an audience over time and kind of build a stronger relationship with your listeners in exchange for sort of exclusive content on a monthly basis. Unfortunately, of course, we don't have live in-person performances currently, but COVID-19 has sort of created an opportunity for artists to finance their work by paying live streaming performances. And this is something I think we're seeing more and more these days. I think most people do this sort of using one of the main video streaming platforms. So that could be Twitch, that could be YouTube, any of the major social media platforms like Facebook or Instagram. And then, you can even use Zoom for that matter. And so it's a great way to sort of get people watching and then encourage them to submit donations using a payment service like PayPal, for example. There are some platforms that have been developed specifically for music and that actually work the whole sort of payment structure into the platform. I'm thinking of Stageit and Street Jelly as two of those that come to mind. That being said, you're definitely not the only one right now who is having the same thought and who is thinking about putting their performances online. So it becomes increasingly important to stand out from the rest and to make your performance seem worth paying for, frankly. A lot of that comes down to audiovisual quality. which of course necessitates having the equipment to capture your performance to a high enough standard. All that to say, there are a lot of ways that you can go about it, but I think you just need to be strategic and sort of find the approach that fits your profile, fits your abilities, and fits your needs as an artist.